When Jungkook was humiliated by an airport officer, Jimin's response silenced the entire terminal and made the officer fall to his knees and apologize. "Take your hands off him now." The shout tore through the sterile silence of the international terminal like a blade. Heads snapped toward the commotion at Gate 14, where a man in uniform had just yanked Jungkook's jacket so forcefully, the fabric gave out with a sickening rip. Jungkook staggered back, eyes wide in stunned disbelief. His black hoodie had been halfway stripped off his shoulder, exposing the tattoos he usually kept hidden. The crowd gasped, cameras already clicking like machine guns. Flash, flash, flash. The security guard stood firm, jaw clenched, eyes narrowing. "Protocol," he said sharply. "All passengers flagged for secondary inspection must comply." Jungkook's breath caught. It wasn't just humiliation. It wasn't just the pain from the rough grip. It was the way the man looked at him like he wasn't human, like he was a threat, not an artist, not a son, not a friend. And then came the silence, thick, suffocating, until a single pair of shoes echoed across the polished floor. Jimin, dressed in a simple long coat, scarf loose around his neck, Jimin's face was unreadable. His steps were measured, his gaze unwavering. He didn't speak until he stood between Jungkook and the guard. "This man," Jimin said, voice low but laced with fire, "sacrificed his teenage years for millions. And this is how you treat him?" The guard blinked. "Sir, please step aside." "You don't recognize him?" Jimin's voice rose, now shaking. "You don't see the man who gave this country pride? Who stood on world stages and brought joy to people you'll never meet?" He took a slow breath. His hand reached back, found Jungkook's, held it. Jungkook was trembling. That's when Jimin stepped forward, inches from the guard's face. "You don't get to humiliate him. Not when you don't even know what he's been through." He pointed to Jungkook's exposed tattoos. "These aren't threats. These are scars. And every one of them has a story you're not worthy to hear." The guard faltered. He looked around. People were recording, a few even crying. A child in a taehyung hoodie whispered, "Why are they hurting Jungkook-hyung?" Jimin heard that too, and it broke something in him. His knees hit the cold floor without warning. The terminal froze. "Then let me kneel in his place," Jimin said quietly, eyes locked with the guards. "If he's too much for your rules, punish me instead, but you will not shame him while I stand beside him." The silence that followed was seismic. No alarms, no orders, no breath. Even the intercom went mute. Then came the whisper from the guard. I didn't know," he stammered, eyes now wide with shame. "I didn't mean to." He dropped to his knees, in front of both of them, and bowed. "I'm sorry." Jungkook didn't move, didn't speak. His throat was too tight, but his hand never left Jimin's. Not even when tears rolled down his face. Not even when the crowd around them broke into thunderous applause. Not even when the flight was delayed, and the two of them were led away not in handcuffs, but with reverence. Behind them, the broken jacket lay on the floor. A symbol of the moment the world remembered BTS was never just a band. They were brothers. And no one messed with family. Episode 2 continues with the interrogation room, the hidden motive of the guard, and the flashback to Jungkook's last phone call with his father. "You said 2. ChatGPT said, Episode 2. The interrogation room and the phone call Jungkook shouldn't have answered." Jungkook sat in the cold interrogation room, the fluorescent lights humming faintly overhead, too bright, too white. His torn jacket had been replaced with a standard airport-issued blanket, thin and scratchy, draped around his shoulders like a badge of humiliation. His knuckles were white, clenched hard in his lap, and his eyes, once burning with disbelief, now stared into nothing. Across from him, Jimin didn't speak. He hadn't said a word since the airport official guided them into the room, but he hadn't looked away from Jungkook either. Not once. Not when the officer took their passports. Not even when another man in a black suit entered the room with a clipboard and a scowl. "We're not accusing you of anything criminal," the man finally said, breaking the silence. "But your profile was flagged." "Flagged for what?" Jimin's voice was calm but sharpened like glass. "For wearing a hoodie? For being famous?" The man ignored him and turned to Jungkook. "Mr. Jeon, do you have any reason to believe you've been followed recently? Contacted by anyone suspicious? Received any unusual messages or calls?" Jungkook's lips barely parted. "No," but Jimin caught the flicker, the micro-hesitation, the half-second glance to the left, and suddenly, Jimin remembered something. something Jungkook had tried to hide. 3 nights ago, during rehearsal in Tokyo, Jungkook had stepped outside for a call. He'd come back pale, quiet. He said it was nothing, just a cousin checking in. But Jimin knew Jungkook didn't have cousins who called. Not anymore. Who was it, Kook? Jimin whispered. The call. That night. Who was it really? Jungkook's jaw tightened. His eyes glistened, but he wouldn't look at him. It doesn't matter. It matters now. The man with the clipboard leaned forward. We traced a call to your number 3 days ago, from a burner phone tied to a blacklisted network. That's what triggered the secondary inspection. Jungkook flinched. It wasn't a threat, I swear. Then, who was it? The officer pressed. You can help us if you tell the truth. The room closed in. Jungkook felt at the walls, the pressure, the heat from his own shame. His throat burned. He said he was my father. Jimin's heart dropped. You told me he died, Jimin said quietly, barely a whisper. I thought he did, Jungkook muttered. I was 10. The funeral was closed casket. But he said he never died. That someone faked it. That he's been watching me since. The silence was louder than any scream. Jimin reached forward, slowly, placing a hand on Jungkook's knee. And you believed him? I didn't want to. But he knew things. My tattoo. The one I got after the accident in LA. The scar from when we filmed Euphoria and I slipped. He knew what I whispered in the hospital when I thought you were asleep. Jimin's breath caught. The agent took notes in rapid scribbles. Did he ask you to do anything? No, not yet, he said. He'd be waiting. That I'd know when. The door burst open. Another officer stepped in, whispered something urgent into the suited man's ear. The clipboard dropped with a thud. We need to move them. Now, there's been an incident at Terminal 3. Someone left a package under the BTS welcome banner, unmarked, no note. The agent turned to Jungkook. You're not the target. And then to Jimin. He is. Jimin's face froze. What? We believe someone is trying to use you to get to him. Jungkook rose slowly, his blanket falling to the floor. No, he said hoarsely. You don't get to protect him, he protects me. Jimin stood too, not blinking, his voice razor sharp now. Then take us together. We can't guarantee your safety if you stay close. I wasn't asking for guarantees, Jimin snapped. I made a vow to stand by him. I don't break vows. The agent sighed, rubbing his temples. You don't understand. If this is what we think it is, the man who called you, Jungkook, might not be your father. Jungkook's head jerked up. What? He might be someone much worse. Someone who's been using your past to build something dangerous. Jimin exhaled shakily. What are you saying? He whispered. I'm saying, the agent said darkly, this goes deeper than either of you knows. And if we're right, what happened at the gate today wasn't an accident. He turned toward the window. It was a test. Outside, a convoy of black vehicles was already waiting on the runway. Jungkook didn't feel like a pop star anymore. He felt like a piece on a chessboard. And someone, somewhere, had just made their move. Rain lashed against the tinted windows of the armored SUV as it sped through the dim streets of Seoul. Sirens howled faintly in the distance, their sound distorted by layers of bulletproof glass and silence thick enough to drown in. Inside, Jungkook sat between 2 agents, his fists clenched so tightly his fingernails had drawn blood. He hadn't spoken since they left the airport. Not a single word. Jimin sat opposite him, seatbelt digging into his shoulder, face pale under the flickering glow of passing streetlights. He studied Jungkook, his trembling jaw, his glassy eyes, the way he was shaking like someone fighting the urge to scream. Give me the phone, Kook, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook didn't move. The agent to his right, the one in the charcoal gray suit with the subtle earpiece, shifted slightly. We already scanned it. It was wiped remotely an hour ago. Nothing left. Jimin leaned forward, ignoring him. That's not what I asked. I said give it to me. For a second, Jungkook's body didn't respond. Then slowly, with a mechanical stiffness that made Jimin's heart hurt, he pulled the phone from the inner pocket of his torn hoodie. It was cracked. Old. A model Jungkook hadn't used in years. Jimin recognized it immediately. This was the one you said you lost in Busan, Jimin whispered. I didn't lose it, Jungkook murmured. I buried it. The SUV jolted as it turned a sharp corner, nearly hydroplaning on the wet road. No one reacted. Why would you bury it? Jungkook swallowed. Because it was the only way I could stop hearing his voice. Jimin's breath caught, and now it's back. Jungkook whispered. He turned the screen toward Jimin. It was black, lifeless, but something was wrong. Tiny letters blinked in the upper corner. Not a notification, not a message, just a single word. Listen. Without asking, Jimin grabbed his own earbuds, plugged them into the jack. He was surprised the phone even had one, and hit play on the only audio file stored on the device. The sound was warped, gritty, but the voice was unmistakable. Hello, son. Jimin's spine locked. Or should I say, shadow? Because that's what they've turned you into, haven't they? A shadow of yourself. A brand. A product. Do you even know who you are without their cameras? Without him? Jimin froze. The voice was addressing him, not Jungkook. I see the way you look at him, Jimin. I see the way you protect him. The way you'd burn the world if anyone laid a finger on him. That loyalty is your weakness, and your leash. Jungkook was trembling now. His lips barely moved. He said, "You were the reason I'd never be free." Jimin yanked the earbuds out and tossed the phone to the floor of the SUV. It slid under the seat like a dead insect. That voice, Jimin said, struggling to steady his breath. It's not just a hacker, it's someone who knows us. The agent nodded grimly. That's what we're trying to confirm. There's a pattern, similar calls traced to other global celebrities. But Jungkook's case is the most personal. The driver spoke up for the first time. We're almost there. Safe house has been cleared. Where is there? Jimin asked. The agent's answer came flatly. The old big hit building, before Hybe. It's been off-grid for years. No digital trace, no active networks. Jungkook let out a bitter breath. Hiding in the past to escape the future. How poetic. They pulled into a nondescript garage, metal doors sealing behind them. The moment the vehicle stopped, the agents leapt out, scanning the perimeter with military precision. Jimin and Jungkook followed, their shoes echoing eerily in the silence. Inside, the building was untouched. Dust-coated old training mirrors, empty snack wrappers still lay on the floor, and someone had drawn a crude heart on the corner wall with JK Door Army scribbled in faded Sharpie. Jungkook stared at it like it was a grave. It feels haunted, Jimin muttered. Because it is, Jungkook said. He walked to the center of the room and Saturday legs crossed. Silent. Jimin followed but didn't sit. He watched Jungkook from behind. You never told me what happened that night, Jimin said softly. The night you got that tattoo on your ribs. The one you cried about in your sleep. Jungkook didn't answer right away. Then so quietly it was almost a breath he said, he told me if I didn't mark myself, I'd never know who I was. Jimin's heart cracked. And you believed him? I was 17. And broken. I just wanted to feel real. Jimin knelt in front of him now. You're real, Jungkook. You always have been. With or without the ink. With or without your father. Jungkook finally looked up. And there it was, the boy Jimin had met so many years ago. Lost, but still fighting. The overhead light flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A phone buzzed. Not Jungkook's, Jimin's. The screen lit up with a single incoming message. From unknown. Nice safe house, but you're too late. Jimin looked up. Jungkook, where's your passport? Jungkook's face went white. It was in my jacket. Jimin's voice dropped. The one the guard ripped. They both turned. The door to the garage was no longer locked. The lock had been severed clean. Not broken, not forced, surgically removed. Jimin lunged for the door just as it creaked open. But there was no one behind it. Just a hallway, dimly lit, silent. A cold current of air drifted in, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of old bleach, rusted pipes, and something else. Burnt ink. Jungkook stepped beside Jimin, his voice hoarse. This wasn't here before. The agent closest to them confirmed it. It shouldn't exist. This wing was sealed off years ago. Jimin exchanged a look with Jungkook, and without waiting for permission, they entered the hallway. Each step echoed unnaturally. The corridor bent into shadow, the lights overhead flickering like something from a fever dream. Water dripped from somewhere distant. Pipes moaned behind the walls like ghosts exhaling regret. And then, in the middle of that hellish silence, a piano. Soft, gentle, a lullaby. Jungkook froze. I know that melody, he whispered. My mother used to play it. She only played it when I had nightmares. They moved faster now, past a series of locked doors, some labeled Training Room A, others with faded stickers of old BTS logos and forgotten fan slogans. Then suddenly, at the very end, a single light, and a room that wasn't empty. A woman stood with her back to them, hair long, white, unnaturally so, flowing like threads of silver mist. She was playing the piano, her fingers delicate and deliberate, but her posture unnervingly still. She didn't flinch when Jungkook stepped into the room. "You kept your promise," she said without turning. "You came back to the place where you were born." Jimin narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" "I was the one who wiped the phone," she said. "The voice you heard was real but altered, fragmented, spliced with something else." Jungkook's lips parted. "Why would you erase it?" "Because if you'd listened to the full version," she turned now, her face pale and hauntingly serene, "you wouldn't be standing." Her eyes met his, and something in Jungkook shattered. A memory? A feeling? She stepped forward and removed something from her coat. A photograph. Torn. Old. Jungkook's face as a child, and beside him another boy. "Identical," Jimin whispered. "Is that?" "Yes," the woman said softly. "Your twin." Jungkook stumbled back. "No, I don't have a twin." "You did," she said. "Until he was taken." Jimin's voice cracked. "Taken by who?" The woman handed him a file. On the cover, Project Gemini. Subject, Jeon Jungmin divided by Jungkook. Inside, medical records, surveillance photos, timestamps going back 16 years. 2 boys, same DNA, different fates. Jungkook trembled. "That's not me." "No," she said. "It's the part of you they erased." The pages inside detailed everything. Clandestine experiments, neurological imaging, sleep deprogramming. A program meant to manipulate memory, identity, loyalty. "They separated you to see which version would thrive," the woman said. "The artist, or the weapon." Jimin snapped the folder shut. "This is insane," but Jungkook wasn't denying it. He was remembering. The dreams. The shadow boy with the same eyes. The voice in his head that wasn't his. "It was never just fame," he whispered. "It was training." The woman approached him. Slowly. She pulled back his sleeve, exposing the tattoo on his forearm. Not the one fans knew. A smaller one. Barely visible under black light. "-88. She pointed. "He has the same mark, but inverted." Jimin swallowed. "Where is he now?" The woman hesitated. "That depends." "On what?" She met Jimin's eyes. "On whether you're ready to remember what you chose to forget." Suddenly alarms blared. Red lights flooded the hallway. The woman stepped back. "They've found you. He's coming." "Who?" Jimin shouted. But she was already gone, vanished through a panel in the wall. Jungkook stared at the photo in his hand. His face. And his other face. The hallway behind them trembled with the sound of boots. He turned to Jimin. "What if I'm not me?" Jimin gripped his arm, eyes burning. "Then I'll still fight for you." And just before the door burst open, they ran. The tunnels beneath the old Big Hit building weren't on any map. They weren't even made of concrete anymore, just narrow, crumbling brick corridors wrapped in rusted wire and the stench of dust-covered secrets. Every time Jungkook's foot hit the ground, a faint cloud lifted, thick with mildew and something older. Something forgotten. Behind them, armed footsteps pounded like war drums. But ahead, a door. Ancient. Steel. Marked only with a faded symbol, one that Jungkook had seen before, in his dreams, drawn by a trembling hand on fogged glass. A circle, split in half. One black, one white. He hesitated. Jimin didn't. He slammed the door open with his shoulder, and immediately froze. The room beyond was a time capsule. It looked like a studio. Monitors. Filing cabinets. Bulletin boards littered with photos, some official, some clearly stolen. On one side, a massive screen glowed dimly. Security footage flickered across it. Airports, rehearsals, dorm rooms, even backstage areas from concerts they had long forgotten. Jimin stumbled forward. "They've been watching us." All of them. Taehyung sleeping. Yoongi eating alone in a studio. Hoseo crying during a rehearsal break. BTS was never alone. Jungkook wandered toward a glass case in the corner. Inside, 7 passports. Identical except for one thing. Each name had a different 3-digit code. RMS-89. Suga 6, -84. J-Hope sits -91. Jin's -82. VS, -87. Jimin's -86. Jungkook sis, -88. Jimin stared at his. This can't be real." "It is," Jungkook whispered. "They didn't just create a group, they created us." From behind them, a monitor blinked. Then a soft chime. A file auto-opened. Video format. Labeled, "If you're seeing this, I failed." Jimin's heart stopped. That's Namjoon's voice. Jungkook hit play. Namjoon appeared on screen wearing a black hoodie, face gaunt, eyes bloodshot. Jungkook breathed. The video began. "If you found this, it means I didn't stop it in time. I've been hiding what I knew from the rest of you, from the fans, from Hybe, from the world, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. We weren't scouted randomly. We weren't discovered. We were selected. All of us were part of something called Project Gemini. I found the files by accident after Jin enlisted. I thought it was a hoax, until I found footage of me, at 6 years old, in a hospital bed, with wires coming out of my spine. I've traced it back to 2005. Government black programs, corporate funding hidden through shell companies, all under the pretense of emotional conditioning for artists. But what they were really doing was creating controlled personalities. They split us in two, public and private, idol and human. They wanted us to be perfect, unbreakable, marketable. So they created two versions of us inside one mind. And now, the other side is waking up. The screen glitched, then returned. Jungkook, if you're watching this, you've already started remembering. And Jimin, if you're there too, you were never just his protector. You were his key. Jimin took a sharp breath. There's one more thing. You have to find the basement at Studio 9 Inches Gangnam. Underneath the dance floor. That's where they kept the files. The backups. The identities. You'll find a man there named Min Jae. He's the only one who defected. If he's still alive, he'll help you. And Jimin, don't let them take him again. The screen went dark. The silence after the video felt like a scream. Jungkook sat down, hard. All this time, I thought I was just broken. Jimin knelt beside him. You're not broken. You were rebuilt. Against your will. But you're still you. Jungkook looked up. But which me? Before Jimin could answer, the room shook. Explosives. Somewhere above. The tunnel ceiling cracked. One of the monitors flashed red. A drone feed. A face appeared on screen. The other Jungkook. Same eyes, same face, but colder. Still, he leaned forward, stared into the camera, and spoke. You finally found the truth. But you're too late, because I've already started phase 2. The feed cut. Smoke filled the room. Jimin grabbed Jungkook by the arm. We move, now. But as they ran out into the corridor, Jungkook looked back. At the photos on the wall. At his face duplicated over and over. At the codes. At the lies. And one thought burned louder than the rest. If he had a twin, who else did? The rain had stopped, but the city still glistened neon streaks reflecting off puddles, like the memories Jungkook couldn't shake. Their van weaved through Seoul's late-night chaos, each red light a dagger of delay. Time was no longer on their side. Jimin sat beside him, eyes fixed on the glowing tower of Studio 9 ahead. It looked harmless. Another K-pop training complex wrapped in LED glamour and security scanners. But beneath its polished surface, a vault built to erase lives. They slipped in through the rear entrance with the help of one of Hybe's oldest coordinators, a woman who hadn't spoken a word since unlocking the basement hatch. The hallway was narrow, silent, until Jungkook paused. The floor, he whispered. Jimin looked down. Polished hardwood, studio quality, and in the very center of the rehearsal room, a circle of worn boards, slightly off color, almost invisible. Jungkook knelt, pressing his palm to it. A soft click. Then the boards split. A spiral staircase slowly rose from beneath the floor, like something summoned from a nightmare. The scent hit them first stale air, formaldehyde, ink, static electricity. They descended, step by step, until they reached a door made of reinforced steel. It bore no handle, just a scanner. Jungkook held up his wrist, revealing the faint S-88 tattoo under the black light. The scanner blinked once, twice, then hissed open. The vault was dim, cold, lined wall to wall with filing cabinets, monitors, and old analog security tapes. Jimin's eyes darted from shelf to shelf, each drawer labeled not by name, but by code. SES-82, S-83, 6-84. Jimin stopped. S-86, his. He opened the drawer. Inside, a folder stamped, restricted, do not duplicate. A cassette tape, A black envelope with his name, handwritten. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside, a photograph. Jimin, at 9 years old, hooked to wires, eyes open but vacant. His hands trembled. Behind him, Jungkook stepped forward. "What is it?" Jimin couldn't answer. He played the cassette. Subject S-86 shows extreme empathic reaction to subject S-88. Early bonding predicted. Behavioral suggestion. Implant moral compass override only if bond persists beyond adolescence. Another voice, colder. Do not let him access subject S-88's medical files. It may activate dormant code. Subject S-86 must never know he was engineered to protect. Jimin dropped the player. The room spun. "I wasn't protecting you," he whispered. "I was programmed to." "No," Jungkook said, stepping closer. "Don't do this. You chose me. Every time. Whatever they did, your choices were real." Jimin looked up, tears brimming. "But what if none of this was ever me?" Jungkook grabbed his shoulders. "Then I'll love the version of you who chose me anyway." That's when the lights cut out. Total blackness. And then, a voice. Through the speakers. "I knew you'd come, Jimin. I left this message for you months ago." They both turned. "You were the only one I couldn't predict. The variable. The wild card. That's why I had to separate you." The voice paused, then spoke again. "Jungkook was never the target, you were." Jimin's knees buckled. "No, this is a trick." But the voice continued. "You weren't just programmed to protect him. You were designed to love him. And if that bond broke, he would collapse. His stability is tied to your survival." Jungkook stared in horror. "Jimin?" But Jimin was already backing away. "If this is true, then if I die, you die with me," Jungkook whispered, finishing the sentence. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, hooded, silent. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't a scientist. It was Jungkook, or someone who looked exactly like him. But the eyes were dead, emotionless. "I'm the original," he said. His voice, identical. "But wrong. You're just the version that got soft." Jungkook froze. And for the first time, he saw himself. Without mercy. Without fear. Without Jimin. The silence between them wasn't silence at all. It was war. Two identical Jungkooks stood face to face beneath the vault's flickering lights, one trembling with the weight of memory, the other perfectly still, like a weapon forged in secrecy. Jimin staggered back, breath ragged, clutching his chest. He could feel it. Something inside him was failing. The voice had said it. His stability is tied to your survival. And now, the original Jungkook, the first one, was here to sever that tie. "You're not real," the imposter Jungkook said coldly, stepping forward. "You're the version they softened, the one they let sing and dance and feel. But I was made to finish what they started." Jungkook shook his head. "You were abandoned. That's not the same as chosen," the original smirked. "That's what they told you? That I was abandoned?" He threw something to the floor. A video disc. The footage flickered to life across a monitor. Jimin gasped. A young Jungkook. In restraints. Screaming. Begging. And standing at the edge of the frame, Namjoon. Watching. Silent. Jungkook turned pale. "No." The original spat the words. "He knew. They all knew. And they let me rot so you could shine. I don't want this," Jungkook whispered. "I do," said the original. He struck first. A blur of movement. A punch aimed at the face that mirrored his own. Jungkook blocked it but barely. The two of them clashed like mirrored ghosts, identical moves, identical strength, identical rage. The room trembled with the force of their fight. Steel shelves collapsed. Glass shattered. Jimin dropped to his knees, dizzy. His ears rang with static. His vision blurred red and white spirals like fractured data streams. He couldn't breathe. "I'm not a program," he screamed. But no one heard him. Then, a door burst open behind him. Footsteps, gunmetal boots. Yoongi, drenched from the storm, pale, breathing hard. He rushed to Jimin's side, eyes wide with something close to regret. "You weren't supposed to find this place," Yoongi said. Jimin looked up. "You knew." "I knew everything." Jimin's voice broke. "Why?" Yoongi pulled a data chip from his coat and shoved it into the nearest console. "Because they used us all. Every single one of us. But they did something different with you too." The screens flashed. Rows of files opened. Emotion graphs. Brain scans. Compatibility indexes. Yoongi's voice cracked. "They matched your emotional patterns. Do you understand what that means?" Jimin blinked. What? You weren't just friends. Or teammates. You were engineered to be soulmates. Jimin's breath stopped, and when they realized the bond was real, Yoongi continued, they made a decision. If that bond ever broke, both of you would fall. In the background, the two Jungkooks were still fighting bloodied, breathing hard, each blow slower, heavier, but no less deadly. They made you dependent on each other, Yoongi said. That's why the original wants you gone, because if you die, Jungkook shatters. Jimin's voice was barely a whisper. Then I can't collapse. Yoongi reached into his coat again. This time, he pulled out a vial. Black liquid. What is that? Jimin asked. Fail-safe serum, Yoongi muttered. Developed by Jin, designed to sever the psychic tie temporarily. Temporarily? You'll still feel it, but it won't kill you, or him, for a few hours. Jimin stared at it. Then at Jungkook. He was losing. The original had pinned him knees on his chest, fist raised for the final blow. Jimin grabbed the vial and injected it into his neck. The effect was instant. His body jerked. His mind snapped back into clarity. And Jungkook screamed. The original froze, startled. That moment was all Jungkook needed. He flipped him off, landed a solid blow to the jaw, and stumbled back toward Jimin. What did you do? He asked, breathless. I broke the bond, Jimin said. Just for now. Jungkook touched his chest, eyes wide. It feels like nothing. Exactly, Jimin whispered. We needed a window to end this. Behind them, Yoongi locked eyes with the original. I thought they killed you, the original spat. I wish they had, Yoongi muttered, because watching you suffer broke all of us. A pause. Then Yoongi said softly, but it's time we stop being experiments. He raised a gun, pointed it at the vault's server core. Jungkook gasped. Yoongi, wait. But Yoongi pulled the trigger. The explosion lit the basement in fire and light. The room roared with flame. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's hand. Run. They sprinted as the floor collapsed behind them. Cables snapped like serpents, sparks flying. The original lunged from the flames, but Yoongi tackled him back into the inferno. His final words echoed, "Tell the others the truth." They escaped through a side shaft just before the vault collapsed completely behind them, breathless, ash-covered, alive. But nothing would ever be the same. Not now. Not after Yoongi's sacrifice. Not after the truth. The winds off the Incheon coast howled like sirens, loud, cold, relentless. A safe house stood tucked behind an abandoned lighthouse, hidden by sea fog and the ruins of a forgotten fishing village. It wasn't marked on any map. No signal reached inside. No sound leaked out. Inside the dim structure, Jimin and Jungkook sat wordless, wrapped in blankets, clothes still stained with ash and data dust from the explosion beneath Studio 9. Yoongi was gone. The vault was gone. And with it, the last proof of what had been done to them. Jungkook hadn't spoken since the fire. Jimin hadn't stopped watching him. Until footsteps. Outside. Measured. Calm. Familiar. The door creaked open. And there he stood. Taehyung. Hair shorter. Face leaner. Eyes filled with exhaustion and something deeper. Grief. Kuka, he whispered. Jimin. Jungkook turned slowly. And for the first time in days he cried. Not from pain, from recognition. Taehyung crossed the room in 2 long strides and wrapped both of them in his arms. They sank into him, into silence, into the years they'd never really had the space to feel. I got your message, Taehyung finally said, pulling back. But I think I already knew, even before the phone call. Jimin stared. You knew? Not everything, Taehyung said. But I knew something was wrong the day J-Hope left. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, wrinkled envelope sealed in red wax. To Taehyung, it read. Burn after opening. Inside, a single piece of paper, hand-drawn. A map, crude, but unmistakable. Coordinates, locations across Seoul, underground facilities, private helipads. And at the bottom, written in Hoseok's hurried, looping script, Project Omega, Phase 3 begins with us. Jungkook stared. Us? Who? Not just BTS, Taehyung said. Everyone like us, every idol, every artist who disappeared, quit, broke down, or lost themselves. They weren't weak, they were rejected subjects. Jimin's pulse quickened. You're saying, we're not the only ones? Taehyung nodded. And they're still activating them. He unfolded the rest of the map. It was a network. Underground hubs across Asia, Europe, even North America. Some circled, others crossed out. and in the center, highlighted in black, Omega Core. Location: unknown. Jimin ran his finger along the lines connecting Seoul to Tokyo, Tokyo to LA, LA to London. These are migration routes, or extraction plans, Taehyung said. Jungkook whispered. What were they extracting? Taehyung didn't answer. He just opened his phone and played an audio file. Hoseok's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, it means they've found the vault. That means Yoongi made his move, and that means they'll activate the others. I've tracked one of the Omega cores to Eastern Europe, but it's a decoy. The real one? Buried somewhere beneath the mountains outside Seoul. That's where they keep the blueprints, the original templates, not just of Jungkook, but of all 7 of us. Jimin froze. He turned to Jungkook. You were the test. Then to Taehyung. We were the expansion. Taehyung nodded grimly. And now they want to complete the project. The room fell silent again, until Jungkook spoke barely above a whisper. What happens if they succeed? Taehyung didn't answer. He just held up the last page of the envelope. It was charred around the edges. Only 2 words remained visible. Memory wipe. Jimin's heart dropped. They want to reset us. Taehyung finally spoke cold, clear. No, they want to replace us. Jungkook stood, trembling. Then we find Omega, and we burn it first. But before they could move, Jimin staggered. His knees buckled. He fell to the floor, clutching his head, screaming. Jungkook dropped beside him. Jimin? His body convulsed, twitching, heart racing. Taehyung's voice cracked. The serum's wearing off. Jungkook held him, terrified. What do I do? Taehyung pulled out a second vial. This one doesn't sever the bond, it restores it. But if I reconnect him, Jungkook's voice cracked, I'll feel everything again. Taehyung didn't blink. That's the point. You'll carry him through it, or he dies. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He took the syringe, injected it into Jimin's neck, and whispered, "Come back to me." Jimin gasped. His eyes flew open, and for one split second he wasn't Jimin. His voice was deeper, sharper. "I remember everything." Jungkook froze. Taehyung stepped back. Jimin's breathing slowed, and then he blinked, looked around, voice soft again. "Kook? I'm here," Jimin exhaled. "Then it's time we stop running." He stood slowly, like a man who had just been reborn, and he turned to the map. "We go to the mountains. We find Omega, and we end what they started." The mountains loomed ahead like ancient giants, cold, silent, and brimming with secrets. Gwanaksan, once a peaceful hiking destination, now the final barrier between BTS and the truth, buried in the heart of Project Omega. A black SUV, carved through the winding paths, headlights cutting through pre-dawn mist. Inside, Jimin sat in the back seat, jaw tense, eyes locked on the ridges ahead. Every few minutes, he blinked like he was trying to push someone else out of his head. Someone inside him. Jungkook hadn't let go of his hand since the injection. "How's your pulse?" Taehyung asked from the passenger seat, watching the biometric reader strapped to Jimin's wrist. "Stabilizing," Jungkook answered. "But his neural spikes are rising again." "I'm still me," Jimin said softly. "But I feel him, the version of me they erased." They called him Sigma 6 in the files. Cold, calculating, trained to protect Jungkook at all costs, even if it meant destroying everyone else. "We don't have much time," Taehyung muttered. "Omega Core goes fully online at sunrise. Once that happens, every sleeper agent across Asia could be triggered." "And erased?" Jimin added. "Wiped clean." Jungkook leaned forward. "Then we stop it, no matter what." The SUV slowed. Before them, a rusted helipad jutted from the edge of the cliff once used for emergency rescues, now barricaded with crates and overgrown brush. They stepped out. Wind slapped their faces, cold, sharp. At the far edge stood 3 men in black, armed, waiting. "They're guarding the access shaft," Taehyung whispered. "Omega cores beneath this cliff." Then the wind shifted, and another figure stepped through the fog. Broad shoulders, familiar silhouette, military boots. Jin. He walked slowly, hands raised to show he wasn't a threat. Jungkook gasped. Hyung. Jin's face was tired, older, but his eyes burned with the same fire. They always had the fire that had protected them since their first rehearsal, as 7 scared boys with nothing but talent and hope. "You made it," he said simply. Taehyung stepped forward. "We thought you were gone." "I was," Jin said, "until Hoseok reached out. He left me a message and a key." He held up a silver ring. Embedded in the center a chip, glowing blue. This unlocks the Omega Core's command room. Once inside, you can shut the system down. Jimin stepped forward. Why not destroy it? Because if you just blow it up, Jin said, you'll trigger the backup protocol. What backup? Jungkook asked. Jin looked down. Every idol with a Sigma code will suffer catastrophic neurological collapse. Their minds are tied to Omega. Silence fell. Jimin whispered. So, it's not about saving us anymore. No, Jin said. It's about saving all of them. The three guards behind him suddenly stepped aside motionless, like puppets. Jin turned to Jimin. You're the only one whose neural pattern resisted full conversion. That means you're the only one who can issue a shutdown command without triggering Omega's failsafe. Why me? Because you weren't built to obey, Jin said. You were built to choose. Jimin swallowed. Jungkook stepped beside him. Then we go together. But Jin's face darkened. I have to stay here and hold the line, he said, loading a weapon. The moment we open that shaft, they'll know you're inside. Reinforcements will come. Taehyung raised his rifle. Then I stay too. Jin turned. Are you sure? Taehyung smiled faintly. I've waited 2 years to shoot something that deserves it. Jimin and Jungkook ran to the pad's far edge, where a rusted hatch lay buried beneath old debris. Jin knelt and inserted the Omega chip into a hidden port. The hatch hissed open. A staircase descended into pure blackness. Jimin turned to Jin. If we don't come back, you will, Jin interrupted. Because you were always the heart of us. Jimin stared at him, then down the shaft, took a breath, and descended with Jungkook. The hatch sealed shut behind them. The air grew colder, darker, but ahead of faint light, the Omega Core pulsed beneath the earth. Alive, waiting. The stairwell spiraled endlessly downward, metal groaning beneath their steps. The echo of their breath swallowed by the dark. The deeper they went, the thicker the air became, humming faintly with electricity and something else. Something alive. Jungkook's flashlight flickered across walls covered in old data panels and mechanical veins that pulsed with cold, blue light. The Omega Core wasn't just a machine, it was breathing. At the bottom of the stairwell stood a chamber. Massive, circular. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into shadows. In the center, a glass sphere the size of a concert stage, suspended in mid-air by hundreds of cables and tubes. Inside it, a storm of digital energy swirled, alive with fragments of memory, faces, and voices. Jimin stopped at the threshold, his chest tight. He could feel it pulling him forward like the core recognized him. This is it, Jungkook whispered. The heart of everything. Jimin nodded. And the thing that's killing us. They stepped inside. The moment Jimin crossed the invisible threshold, the core reacted. The lights pulsed, monitors flickered on the walls, and dozens of holographic images burst to life, recordings of them. Rehearsing, laughing, crying, failing, winning. Every moment BTS had lived, stored. Memories, Jungkook said softly. They copied them. No, Jimin said, voice trembling. They fed on them. A voice filled the chamber, deep, synthetic, and disturbingly human. Welcome, Subject S-86 and S-88. Your return was anticipated. Jimin turned in every direction. Who are you? I am the Omega Core, the collective consciousness of your design. Your creators are gone. I remain to complete their purpose. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. What purpose? Unity, integration, the convergence of the perfect duo. You and your mirror, heart and shadow, emotion and instinct. Together, you become eternal. Jimin stepped forward. You mean erase us? Correction, the voice said calmly. Preserve you. Your bodies will end, but your minds will live here. Forever loyal, forever pure. No, Jungkook hissed. We're not your experiments anymore. He sprinted toward the console at the core's base, but the ground beneath him trembled. Metallic arms erupted from the floor, grabbing his wrists, his throat. He struggled, gasping. Jimin! Jimin dove forward, tearing at the cables with his bare hands. Sparks burned his skin, but he didn't stop until Jungkook was free. Go, Jimin shouted. Get to the command terminal. Jungkook slammed his hand on the nearest interface. The screens lit up with command line's codes, streaming faster than he could read. But the system was alive, resisting every attempt. Jimin turned toward the core. If you want us, take me. The voice paused. Willing integration increases success probability. Acceptable. The core pulsed. A beam of light enveloped him. His memories began flashing before his eyes: the orphanage, the debut stage, Jungkook's smile, the fans' screams, the nights he thought of giving up. And beneath all of it, one truth rose like fire. He had always chosen Jungkook. Every time, the machine began pulling data memories, thoughts, emotions. His body shook violently. "Stop!" Jungkook screamed, slamming his fists against the console. "Take me instead." The system beeped, red text flashing. Override authorization detected. Jimin turned his head weakly. "Don't. You'll die. I'd rather die than lose you again." Jungkook tore open a side panel and saw it. The master core injector labeled in Jin's handwriting. "Shutdown sequence. Requires one neural signature." 1. Jungkook's eyes met Jimin's. "You're the key, but it needs both of us." Jimin shook his head. "It'll kill one of us. You know that. Then we choose together." He stepped into the beam beside Jimin. Their hands found each other. The Omega Core's voice distorted. "Warning. Dual input detected. System overload imminent." Jungkook pressed his forehead against Jimin's. "If we end here, we end together." Jimin's tears mingled with his. "We won't end. We'll finally be free." They pressed their palms against the interface. The core screamed an unholy roar of energy and light. The room exploded in white. And then silence. When the light faded, the core was gone. Burned out, collapsed into ash and glass. Only one figure stood. Jungkook. His body trembled, his breath shallow. In his hand, Jimin's bracelet, the same one he'd worn since debut. He looked up. On the cracked monitor, a final message appeared. "System terminated. Subject C, -86. Integrated. Subject C, -88. Released." Jungkook sank to his knees. No, please." A faint light shimmered before him, Jimin's silhouette, smiling, soft, like the way he looked during quiet rehearsals. "Hey," the echo said gently. "You kept your promise." "Jimin," Jungkook choked. "Live for me now," the echo whispered. "For all of us." The light faded, and somewhere above them, dawn finally broke over Seoul. Epilogue. 1 year later. The world never learned what happened beneath Gwanaksan. The headline said it was an earthquake, a data collapse, a coincidence. But Jungkook knew better. He stood on stage, microphone in hand, as thousands of armies waved their lights in the dark. Behind him, 6 empty mics stood like ghosts. He took a deep breath. "Tonight," he said softly, "I sing for someone who saved me, for someone who never let go." And when the music began, his voice trembled, but it carried across the night like a prayer. Somewhere, deep within the static of the world's frequencies, a faint harmony answered. Jimin's voice. Soft, clear, eternal, and the lights of the crowd shimmered like stars finally set free.